Multiple sources reported late last night that Netflix has won over the board at Warner Bros. Discovery and will start a window of exclusive negotiations to buy the studio. While this does not mean that a sale is final or even imminent, it does mean that Netflix, for now, is the victor of this three-company bidding war, and they will now be the only potential buyer allowed to negotiate a deal with Warner Bros. Discovery. However, those talks could still result in a deal not being reached and the bidding process opening back up.
Boy, I've been dying to get home to talk about this story because Netflix has won the bidding. Netflix is the key player now in play to buy Warner Brothers Discovery. This is for $82.7 billion. They're paying roughly $28 per share at 85% cash, which means the rest will probably be stock offerings, that sort of thing. They beat out their competitors. Now, this was just for the studio, the film studio, and HBO Max. This is separate from the TV. They did not buy the TV. They beat out Paramount, who did put in an offer to buy the TV along with the studio and the streaming, but they offered $27 per share. All cash, by the way, no stock options, which is important because the stock can drop after the purchase. But $27 per share, a dollar less than Netflix offered for the whole thing. Netflix offered a dollar more just for half of the company. So clearly that was the bigger deal. Now, no details have emerged from what Comcast offered yet, but probably not anywhere near either one of them. So they are out, which is what they did last time, by the way. AT&T used to own Warner Brothers. They put it up for sale. Discovery ended up buying it. That's how we have Warner Brothers Discovery. Comcast wanted to buy it at that time, but they pussed out, and they pussed out again. You know, always the bridesmaid, never the bride here. But Netflix comes through, man. Netflix has promised to keep the studio intact. In fact, a lot of the movie people, and by the way, this is where I get my education on this. I'm not some insider. I don't know, everything about this, but I watch the movie insiders and I follow movie news like I do wrestling news. So this has been a huge story in the works for months in the movie world before it was ever even on wrestling people's radar. Netflix is keeping the studio intact. They're putting out studio-produced films. A lot of the movie people think they're worried that Netflix is going to squash theatrical movies because they're a streaming service. But I maintain that Netflix is part of the reason that they're interested in this, other than the ungodly huge catalog. And by the way, we are going to talk about how this affects AEW, but before we do that, we got to understand the situation. But Netflix is going to be taking on the studio and branching off into theatrical productions. They don't have a studio. They produce films, but they're not a studio like Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers is one of the oldest studios in Hollywood. They have the Hollywood Backlot Brawls is like on Warner Brothers lot. Basically, they got the infamous water tower and all that. You've seen it, whether you know it or not. It's iconic. That's Netflix now. They're going to put a big N on it. They're going to spray paint over the Warner Brothers logo, just a big N, like an NWO over the WCW belt. That would be sick. But we are not there yet. So Netflix has won exclusive negotiations now. They outbid anybody else that was on the table. By the way, biddings are closed, so Disney is not going to come in. I seen that people talking about that. Oh, it'd be funny if Disney came through. No, biddings were open, biddings are closed. There's a process to this. Netflix is now the only person that can bid. Now, the deal might fall through still. Warner Brothers could say, yeah, I don't know, that doesn't sound right. Maybe we'll just look somewhere else. And maybe go to Paramount at that point or whatever the fuck happens. But not likely. Rumor got out a few days ago that Warner Brothers was pretty keen on Netflix buying them. They liked what Netflix had to offer. Reportedly, Netflix is not interested in really changing a whole hell of a lot. They're acquiring a full theatrical movie studio. So they don't need to go in and, now I'm going to replace all your executives with our executives and we're going to do the creative our way and stuff. No, they're basically turnkey. Like, we want to own you, but we're going to keep all of you around, including David Zaslav, the CEO of Warner Brothers, who put this deal together, by the way, my man, when it was bought by Discovery for like 40-some billion. So they nearly doubled their money on this deal. Fucking huge. Way to go, Zazzy, right? So apparently, Warner Brothers is pretty much probably going to stay the same, other than all their movies are going to end up going to Netflix when they're done in theaters. And that does, in fact, bring us to what's going to happen with AEW. Because although Netflix did not buy the TV for AEW, so for now, AEW's TV deals are fine. TBS, TNT, they are not owned by Netflix. They are, however, still for sale. So somebody at some point is going to come along and try to buy those channels. But it's not going to be today, and it's not going to be Netflix. So they're safe there for now. But they're on streaming. They're on HBO Max. They have a whole streaming deal for their pay-per-views and for their live Dynamite and Collision, but also the back catalog stuff. So, and it's a good home. HBO Max is one of the bigger streaming services. They're going to eventually have to find a new home, and here's why. See a lot of people speculating about this, a lot of people talking out of their ass, a lot of people who think they know half-truths and a lot of things like that. See a lot of people saying, all the wrestling in one place, this is going to be great when AEW comes there, or all sorts of wild things across the table. But here's the reality, folks. When have you not known WWE to be ruthless in their contracts and brutally litigious? Ever? Anybody? Bueller? Have you ever known WWE to kind of just be a little limp-wristed when it comes to legal stuff? They don't really dot their T's and cross their I's, so to speak. It's just not a thing. We all know WWE, they're legal legends, right? They're legend. They're legal. They don't even settle out of court. They're like, oh, you want to sue us? Which, by the way, John Cena's getting sued along with WWE for the do-do-do-do. We'll talk about that in another video, but we know WWE doesn't roll over and play dead. Maybe TKO will. I don't fucking know. They're new owners, but WWE traditionally takes the fight to you. Right? So you can't look me in the eye and tell me you don't think WWE signed a 10-year, $5 billion contract with Netflix to be the exclusive home of Monday Night Raw and all of WWE internationally, just to allow in the contract for Netflix to go and, bring on AEW and have Dynamite there. And goddamn well that if that were the case, you would have Monday Night Raw and then your next suggested show. Oh, you liked that? How about checking out AEW Dynamite? And there's so many people online, it's hilarious. They're like, yeah, that's exactly what's going to happen. Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. No, you don't understand contracts. Now, do I know for a fact? No, because that is not public information. Even though Netflix and WWE are publicly traded companies, they're in some of the details, the important details, the length of the deal, the amount of the deal, the important stuff to shareholders kind of thing. Those details are out to the public, but the nuts and the bolts of the contract, the fine print, if you will, that stuff doesn't get out to the public. But I'll fucking eat my hat here on air with a bottle of mustard if WWE doesn't have an exclusivity clause in their contract before they sign a 10-year, $5 billion deal with Netflix to lock up Raw on Netflix, just for Netflix to go, yeah, you know what would look really nice next to WWE? Dynamite would. Now, is this going to happen right away? Not exactly. Check out this clip from Brian Alvarez.
Do I think that the first thing that Netflix is going to do is take AEW off Max because, of course, Raw is on Netflix. I think that this is, I mean, there's far, far bigger fish to fry than that. Now, could it happen? Well, of course, could happen. But is it a guarantee? Well, of course not.
Yo, editing Seth here, and it's worth jumping in here to note that I am seeing some people now talking that Netflix had said that it's possible that they're going to keep HBO Max as its own standalone streaming service. So if they do that, which I still don't know why that makes sense, why would you spend $82 billion on acquiring content that you're going to put on a different platform? Yeah, you're making the money off of it, but you're Netflix. But if that's the case, then this whole video is null and void because AEW's streaming deal will probably be okay. But who knows? Just thought I'd add this in here to be complete.
This comes to us from the Wall Street Journal, who wrote this. HBO and its streaming service, HBO Max, will continue to operate as a standalone, Netflix CEO Ted Sarandos said. Co-CEO Greg Peters said, the HBO brand is powerful to consumers. That gives us a lot of options to figure out how you package things in different ways, he said. Okay, so whether this means that we're going to continue to go on to have two completely separate, independently running streaming services, Netflix and HBO Max, or whether Netflix will start to package them together as a bundle. Hey, for $27 a month, you get Netflix and HBO Max. Or whether that means, like, you know how in Disney Plus, you now have Hulu right inside of Disney Plus. Maybe HBO Max becomes one of those things inside of Netflix. Like you load up Netflix and you can look at your highest recommended, or you can click on the HBO Max option. I don't know what their ultimate plan is going to be there. They're saying they're not quite sure how they're going to bundle it all together. But the one thing they are saying is that they are going to keep HBO Max as a separate functioning entity.
So will this be an overnight thing? No, like Brian Alvarez says, there's much bigger fish to fry. But here's the thing. So it's going to take a minute before HBO Max gets merged into Netflix. They still need to go through the whole entire acquisition process. They still have to agree to all of the terms. You know, they could have a fallout in negotiations at any time. Beyond that, then they're going to have to go and talk to the FCC. And they're going to have to face government regulation. And are they running into any antitrust issues? That sort of thing. So there's a lot of hurdles yet that could still axe this thing. But you got to think, how many other companies, only 3 companies even bid on Warner Brothers Discovery. And I'll tell you, Netflix, even though it's a giant streamer, it doesn't have a movie studio. Paramount and Comcast had movie studios and streaming services. So if you want to talk antitrust, Netflix was the least antitrusty of the 3. In fact, David Ellison over at Paramount, he's throwing a fit now, saying that they showed favoritism towards Netflix. Oh, I'm going to call my connections in the White House and have you guys shut down. So all of this is going to be very, very interesting, and all that to say that this is going to be a while before it all plays out and gets to the point where HBO Max is folded in to Netflix. But I swear to fucking God, I tell you right now, mark my words, Warner Brothers Discovery or HBO Max will get folded into Netflix. Netflix didn't just drop almost $83 billion just to have a sister streaming site out there that's going to compete for attention. That's another thing I'm seeing out there. Oh, they could just leave HBO Max because it's got name recognition and stuff. Yeah, and that sucks because HBO does have a huge brand recognition. And I hope when Netflix does absorb HBO Max, swallows them whole, that they keep HBO around in some way. Similar to Disney, they absorbed Hulu, and you can go to Disney Plus, and on their home screen, you can click on a button that says Hulu and get all the Hulu content. Hopefully, they have like a separate tab for HBO Max. But it's also very likely that just all the HBO shit's just going to be splattered on your fucking Netflix homepage like it is now. So when that happens, they're going to run into, if there is an exclusivity clause with WWE, and again, WWE, no slouches in the legal business, are they? Not ones to, leave giant loopholes like that open, are they? No, they're not. So they will, if you follow that logic anyway. So the only reason you're not following me so far is if you just believe in your heart of hearts that Netflix is going to just do whatever they want and they're going to have AEW and WWE right next to each other in recommended section. No. So they're going to run into that wall and they're going to need to find a new home for streaming. Now, could it take all the way up to the point where their streaming contract's up and they just don't even have to deal with it? Probably. Either way, they're going to have to start looking for a new home because it's not going to be on Netflix when that time comes. Okay? AEW, if there's time left on their contract, they'll be paid out for it. They can't just be fired. There's no good reason to fire them. They have contracts for protection and stuff. They're not going to get fired. They're going to get paid out for the remainder of their contract. Netflix does not have to platform AEW. They have to pay AEW. And hell, there might even be a clause in the contract that if they are taken off of TV that they get paid extra or something. I don't know. But they have to pay them, but they don't have to put them on Netflix. Especially when the contract that they have with WWE is worth so much more than anything AEW is going to be worth to them, or even any legal issues with AEW is going to be worth to them. So it's going to be worth just paying AEW off to shut the fuck up and go away. That's what they're going to do. And they're going to cut AEW free to go shop around and find a new home for streaming, which a lot of people are already saying Amazon. And this could be the case. I've heard speculation that Tony's they've done things with AEW before, or there's been talks. That could be a good home. Apple is another giant streaming service. But beyond that, now you're looking at other streaming services that have contracts with WWE again. Peacock, NBC Universal. Maybe when that's up at Comcast, they could put AEW on the cock. But for now, it's still got WWE content. What about Disney Plus? Well, first of all, no. You think they're going to have blood and guts on fucking Disney Plus? Go fuck yourself. But even if they did, they got that giant contract with ESPN. WWE does. ESPN's owned by Disney. So again, another conflict of interest. Paramount, you say, they wanted to buy Warner Brothers Discovery. Maybe they'll buy the TV parts and maybe they'll own AEW. Maybe they will. But guess what? Their streaming service, Paramount Plus, giant $1 billion deal with UFC, owned by TKO. I think TKO is going to want to platform AEW. Now, that one's a little bit more of a gray area because it's MMA, not wrestling, but it is TKO still. So, AEW's streaming service is, their deal with HBO Max is in jeopardy. They are going to have to find a new streaming platform. Mark my motherfucking words. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They're going to have to find a new home. If Netflix gets it, if it all falls through, then maybe something else will happen. Probably Paramount would be next in line to scoop them up, in which case they'd run into the issue with TKO and UFC. But when they hit this wall, they're going to have to find a new home. And hopefully they do, because I don't like seeing wrestling. I don't want to see them downgraded. I don't want to see them go out of business. It's good that they're successful because it creates a healthy, competitive wrestling business. But For those of you who think that Netflix is just going to have AEW on next to WWE, you're out of your goddamn ever-loving minds. And then for the TV, that shit's still up for sale, folks. Warner Brothers Discovery is not going to continue running with just the TV service. They're selling the TV service. Somebody's going to buy that shit. It might end up being Paramount. We'll revisit this when that happens to see what that could look like for AEW's television deals. But for now, streaming, it's very much at risk. But what are your thoughts? Let me know down in those comments below what you think, where you'd like to see AEW end up. If you're one of those stubborn people who thinks, they know AEW is going to be on Netflix because Netflix can just do whatever they want and WWE is too dumb to have an exclusivity clause in their contract, let me know down in the comments below. We can argue about it there. While you're there, hit the like button. It tells YouTube you liked the video and it'll show it to more people, which is good for me, good for us, really. Good for us, because we're all in this together. Hit the subscribe button if you want to see more videos, especially like this. This is my bread and butter, because I'm a movie nerd as much as I'm a wrestling nerd, and like I said, I've been following this shit for months when it's just now showing up on wrestling fans' radars. So if you like this kind of shit, follow me for more. Peace, love, and pizza. I am your boy, Seth Grimes, and we will catch you in the next video. That video there was a real slobber knocker. Head on down to the comments, put a little barbecue sauce on the like button. And while you're there, I would subscribe so you don't miss any other videos. And leave a comment. Everybody's got a fucking comment.